You're listening to Two Babies in a Business, a podcast about business marketing, growth strategy, staff clients, babies, and marriage. I'm Christina. This is Peter, and we are still talking websites.
Yeah, and today we have, I think, a very interesting topic, which is 5 things you need to know when your website launches. So I think to tackle this one, you're going to get 10 things, or maybe 5 things. We'll see, because I will share my 5 thoughts, and Christina will share hers, and we'll see how many we end up with. I'm sure, because Christina is the one that manages a lot of our launches and is sort of hands-on where I'm not. So I think you'll probably get 5 different ones, just because she has a different perspective than I do. So,
well, and a few episodes ago when we did this, we ended up with, I think, like 20. So we'll see if we can follow the rules.
Yeah, we'll see where we go. So do you want me to start, since I'm probably less sort of hands-on and technical when it comes to these things?
Yes, you go for it.
Perfect. So my number one thing you need to know when your website launches is that it's a process, and it takes time. So, it's not like, oh, we want to launch our website at 2 p.m. on Tuesday and it's going to be, everything's perfect and off we go. It doesn't really work that way. It could take, in most cases, probably around 24 hours ish or so, but it can also take longer. And there's all kinds of different factors that play into what goes into a website launch, and some are smoother than others. So number one, it's a process. So, don't line up a huge marketing campaign and a whole bunch of different things on this date because this is the date your website is launching, because that's you need to give yourself time. I would give yourself a month before really actually launching any kind of significant updates or campaigns or whatever. So that's one. I can't read my own writing. Number 2,
thinking about it. He's thinking about
No, I can't read my own writing. Number 2, everything needs to be retested after the launch. So, we test everything when we go get ready for launch. Obviously, we make sure everything's working in our staging environment. But then the launch happens, and then there's an entire period of testing that goes on afterwards, right? So quality assurance testing, making sure everything launched properly, making sure all the forms work. So, there's a period of time that needs to sort of be given in order for everything to be properly tested. So I think probably the number one pet peeve as a marketing agency we get is, oh, my website launched 3 minutes ago and this doesn't work. It's like, okay, great, but we're just starting the process of seeing what works and what doesn't, and making sure everything transferred over properly. So that's
I would be such a rich woman for every email I've gotten literally 3 minutes after a website's launch saying, I just noticed this, can we fix it?
Yeah. This one's kind of CIPR specific, but when you launch a website with CIPR Communications, you have a 30-day period, warranty period, for lack of better terms, which is really a period that we reserve for clients to make sure that anything that needs to be fixed is fixed, little tweaks are made, little adjustments are made, if the right photo is not in the right place, just a little, I would say not like obviously massive major changes, but you have a 30-day warranty period to make sure that the site that was planned to be launched is the site that you're getting. And so in that 30-day period, there could be a lot of stuff that happens and a lot of work that happens just to make sure we end up in a place where you're feeling, my website's perfect now and I'm happy to go. That's that one. The next one is that websites are not and should not be considered static assets. Expect to continue to make changes and adjustments to your website over the long term. So just because you launched a website doesn't mean you're never going to touch a website again. So, what I would recommend, we have a maintenance package that we sell in addition to websites. And those maintenance packages have certain things in them that are related to obviously making sure all your plugins are working, making sure we're monitoring that it doesn't go down, that we're fixing, there's sort of technical maintenance, but then there's also, a certain number of hours to do edits on your website every month. And, if you're thinking about launching a website, think about your business evolves, and your needs with respect to your website will probably evolve. And frankly, Google and search engines, they want to see constant updates and changes on your website from a ranking perspective. So, websites aren't static assets. And so just because you have a website that's brand new and launched doesn't mean you'll never be touching it again until the next time you do a website project. If you do, that's not, I don't know, to me, that's not really a good way to think about a website. So a really important consideration. And number 5 for me, when your website launches, it's very likely that your organic search rankings are going to drop for a period of time. So be prepared for that, because when you're basically relaunching your website, Google then needs to remap your website, remap all your pages, remap your content. Maybe there's different content, maybe there's content that didn't exist. There's a lot of sort of stuff in the back end that happens with respect to Google and or other search engines. So what we see often is sort of an immediate drop when it comes to SEO and search rankings, and then sort of a gradual kind of getting back there over time. There's redirects and things that need to happen. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen from an SEO perspective around the website launch. That especially if you have a really robust SEO program, you need to be thoughtful about and consider about all those things, but also be thinking about your business. Like you don't want to be launching your website peak selling season necessarily. Like think about that from okay, maybe our rankings are going to go down. When does it make sense for us to be doing this at a time in our business cycle where probably it's not necessarily a time where our business is in full demand or whatever. Not always possible. I mean, we're talking about an ideal scenario kind of world, but you are going to see a drop in search rankings and then a gradual increase, sometimes an immediate increase. But there's a bit of a period of relearning when it comes to search engines in terms of where your content exists and how it's organized. That's my 5.
Nice. We do have quite a bit of similar ones, which I feel like is a good thing. I think these are like some litmus tests on is the process internally for CIPR working, and it is. My first, so mine are in a bit of a different order than yours, but there's definitely some repetition here. So I'm going to try to focus on ones that you didn't. But my first one was you and I, or you and your website developer need it all. We need access to everyone. So what I mean by that is passwords, hosting, information, people. I think that, I think of those like easy button commercials, right? Oh, that was easy. And it's like, that's not how a website works. You don't just flick an on switch as you're walking into a room and oh, the website's on. So if you have an existing site, there's probably access we need to that one. There's access that we need to where your URL is being hosted. If you're hosting with the website developer, and we offer that, if you're hosting elsewhere, a really important key factor too, always in launching is, we're obviously doing things with the domain. So when it's a brand new domain, it's a little bit easier. If you have emails attached to that domain, there's questions there. We always like to say everyone needs to be involved in this process. So that's us as consultants, or whoever your consultant is, you as project manager, or your communications marketing team, because there's probably going to be some interruptions in terms of online assets. And then your IT department, or your IT consultant, or whoever's kind of helping you on that side, especially if we're hosting and that's a change, especially if your emails are attached to your URL, which means like that you have a joe@yourcompany.com. We don't, as a practice, host your emails for you. So usually that's a conversation with an IT team to make sure everything's working. Maybe think about it like those are key players. They need to know what's happening. They need to be involved. If you're working with CIPR, we strive to have that conversation at the beginning. So we've heard in previous podcasts, that's like one of our first steps is tracking down the passwords, understanding where access is, ensuring we can get in so that it's not a panic at this stage. And then same with IT, right? We like to have those conversations and loop that individual in from the beginning. As you can imagine, right? Like if you're an individual with work lined up for the day and all of a sudden, your marketing manager or some consultant you've never heard of drops you an email saying, hey, we're launching a website, stop everything. But involving them from the beginning allows that planning to come from their side too. So they're important stakeholders. So to me, that's the important one. It's not just something that, your web developer can go into a room by themselves and do. It's a conversation, it's access, it's a bunch of different things.
Yeah, and I'll just, on that note, just so we always talk about websites in the context of the house. It's like you're moving to a new house. You need movers, you need people to help you move boxes, you need people pack, like you need the whole team around, right? So it's sort of the analogy fits really well there.
Yeah, you need to make sure you like move your power bill to the new place and
Yeah,
table. So yeah,
lots of moving parts.
um, I have, and you kind of had this one, but it takes time, right? So, in perfect case scenarios, it is immediate. It is okay, your website's online and it's good to go. In other case scenarios, it takes time, right? If you think about it, going back to our house scenario, how many boxes did you just fill? If you filled 4, maybe you're moving from a studio apartment to a big house. Okay, that move is easy. Okay, probably throw those 4 boxes in the back of your Honda Civic and drive to the new house and you're good to go. If you think about, okay, maybe you're moving from $1 million home to a $2 million home or another, my assumption is you're going to have a lot of boxes. So the more boxes, the longer it's going to take. So if you think about a website from that perspective too, literally we're taking all the files and all of the things that exist on your website and make it your website and uploading them to a new place. So next time you're sending an email with a lot of attachments, think about it as the same thing, right? If you're attaching lots of files that are big, that upload time is longer. If you're attaching one little file that's small, boom, it goes right in right away. So it's the same thing with a website. We aim usually to try to get things done overnight, right? So that leaves a lot of time for us to be uploading. But they don't always, sometimes it's early morning and everyone wakes up and there's a new shiny website. Sometimes it's the next day. And we're still working through things during the day. So that expectation of, and you said it, 2 p.m. on Tuesday, no, it's probably within a bit of a range. And your developer should work with you on understanding what that range is. I also have for the individual to schedule test time in. So obviously we have that scheduled in. So you said to test when it comes back, and that's good. But I always say like schedule time in on your side to do that and do it pretty quick right after. I mean, we give a green light to clients and say start testing. So ask your developer what that green light timeline is. But like you said, just because an email form worked on a development site, unfortunately, doesn't mean there might not be an error on the live site. So all of those things are important. I think worst case scenario there too is you don't test them and months later you realize a form isn't working for whatever reason. And I think what's interesting about, especially like focusing on forms, we can test them and we always add our own emails, but we don't necessarily know if that email is coming through to you and your email unless you're telling us. So that communication is so important. And if you go through and test all the forms, you'll know that, hey, I'm looking for an email from myself. And I think that's where that piece becomes really important on that side of things.
And I was just going to add to that is like testing and maybe having your IT department involved as well in that testing phase, because there might be something in your email setup that's preventing that form from making it through to your inbox. And so they might be all going to trash. You might not even know that, but so we've tested the form. Yeah, it works, but you're actually not getting the form for whatever reason that has nothing to do with the website. It's more of an IT email issue. And so those are all the things that we need to make sure are sorted out, in real time as this thing gets launched, so that like Christina said, you don't wake up 6 months later, find out that 600 forms got filled out that nobody saw, and you lost a bunch of business, right? That's a huge cost for your business.
It's true. It's so important. And just that realization, because I think, human nature is okay, the developer's testing everything and they say it's good. But again, I'm not allowed into your inbox. So you got to tell me if it's working or not. My other 2 were kind of hand in hand with some of yours too. One is understanding what stabilization means. So typically we have a 2-week period called stabilization where we're testing, retesting, checking site speeds, making sure that access to the site is good, working on some of those redirects if you have an existing site. So trying to capture and understand where to redirect people onto the new site. Okay, so we spend 2 weeks doing that. We call it a stabilization period. And I always remind clients that we don't disappear, right? So it's not your website's launched and we send you a bill and we say, have a great life, but we're there making sure it continues to work. And so have that conversation with the developer. What do you do in the stabilization period? What can I expect? For me, and this is like a personal thing, I know Karen from our team, she deals with a lot of websites too, and website projects. And so we have the same focuses, but one of my big focuses is always site speed, especially those that are looking to move into an SEO or a PPC program afterwards. And so, yeah, it takes a good 2 weeks to understand, okay, running the reports, how fast is it? Can we speed it up? Can we change some things? Can we move things around? So again, give your developers a little bit of grace time, but also ask, hey, what are you doing to stabilize my site after it's up? And then finally, so similar to you, I have that support piece. So always ask your developer what's in scope for support after this website launches. CIPR has a very clear 30-day support on anything included in the contract, out of scope items, right? So you can't come back and go, oh, I wanted a form on this page, or, oh, I forgot I wanted a whole section on clothing, or whatever it is. Anything in scope and that's been talked about, anything that breaks or that you don't know how to use, or that you want little tweaks to now that it's live, all things included in that 30-day support piece. But understand, I think it's a good question to ask before you launch the site, what is in scope afterwards? So, again, it gives you a little bit of allowance to go, I'm not really sure about this photo, but like, I really want to launch the site and get it going. Let's do it. And you'll swap this out within the next 30 days. Perfect. Great. So really understanding that piece, I think, is important.
Yeah,
and then
I was just going to say, within that 30-day support, we also provide training in terms of how to use the CMS and those types of things, right?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the client. So we tackle training a few different ways. Sometimes it's a share screen and going through it. Sometimes depends what kind of learner people are too. We love doing the video approach. So recording videos on the different topics that, how to add content, how to add something to a calendar, how to change a photo. So we like that approach. And then you have them, you can view them, you have your little box on your intranet or in your shared folders that you can refer back to anytime, and can be sent to multiple stakeholders that are going to be updating the site. Or we do the kind of more written manual type form. And that's something that we always discuss at that first kickoff meeting too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Pretty consistent.
I feel like we ended up with, let's say six or seven.
Yeah. Yeah, no, all good things. And I think, I think the number one thing to take away from this podcast is, or this particular episode, or maybe this entire series, is like, websites are big projects. They have lots of moving parts. There's a lot of thinking. The more planning you do ahead of time, the smoother things go afterwards, right? So, websites are not just like rinky-dinky little projects. In fact, they're the most complicated usually of projects when it comes to anything digital in your company. So, and they're important. Your website's your most important asset. So you need to invest properly time and money and energy to make sure it's done properly.
There you go. All right. We're still talking websites next, but remember, you can find us CIPR Comms with 1M on all those different social media channels, and looking forward to hearing what you guys think about these podcasts that are available on iTunes, Spotify, and Spreaker.